In this segment, I'm going to give you an overview of this reloading tool. This is an Ideal No.6 tool made by the Ideal Manufacturing Company, probably in the 1880s or 1890s or around the turn of the last century. In addition to this information here, this information on the lower piece gives you the actual caliber for which this tool was designed to reload. And it says 45 government and then 500. The 45 is 45 caliber. The 500 is a 500 grain bullet. And government is the standard load. So this is really a 45-70 500. This was a load used in the military rifle of the time, which is the trapdoor Springfield. This was designed during the black powder era, when black powder was really the only type of powder in existence. So it's designed only to reload black powder cartridges, and you will see why later on in the video. If we start at the top, we have the integral mold, which is built into the No.6 tool, and this is for a 500 grain bullet. If we move down, you will see this chamber here. This is an adjustable chamber. You can rotate this nut and move this in and out to help seat the bullet. It has several other functions. If you place this inside, which is the decapping rod, inside this tool, it will enable you to decap the spent primers. And this area on top, which is conical, is used to bell the case to accept the bullet. It's a little hard to do by hand, so you can use a mallet. A light tap will do it. The first opening here is for priming the case. You put the case in through the back, and this little rod over here, or stub, pushes the primer into the case. The second opening over here is for sizing the bullet. Once you cast the bullet, you need to size it, and it also spreads the lube out evenly. This little rod, movable rod, pushes it through. So this is indeed all in one, everything you need to reload a 45-70 cartridge. After you cast and lube the bullet, which we will see in other segments of this video, you're going to have to size this, and it's very simple in this tool. You open the tool, you place it in the sizing chamber, which is the second hole right here, and then you just close the tool, and it pushes it through, and as you can see, it distributes the lube over the entire, in the grooves, and it also sizes the case to 0.456. That's the diameter of this bullet, 0.456. Now the first step in reloading a cartridge is, if these have already been fired, is to decap the brass. And it's very simple. You put your decapping rod inside this chamber, the seating chamber. Now, as I mentioned, this usually is lost when you get the tool, so you have to replace it with, this is a lead trim guide, and I added an additional piece of plastic on top to create the right length so it functions properly. You place it inside the double adjustable chamber. You take your case with the spent primer, and you just press it together, and the primer falls out almost immediately right there. Pull out the case, pull out the priming rod, and that's your first step. The next step is to, you have to bell the mouth of the case so it will accept the bullet. Using the top of the adjustable chamber. Now, if you try to do it by hand, you won't get very far, so you place the tool down on a solid surface and give it a light tap, and you will see that it'll flare enough to accept the bullet. Don't overdo it, or else you're going to have trouble putting it in these various other chambers. Priming the case is quite simple, and don't forget to do it after you've belled the case so you don't detonate the primer with the mallet. You just take the case, the belled case, put it in the priming chamber, take a primer, put it here in the opening, and just close the tool slowly, and you'll feel it seat inside the opening. And now you have a primed case. The method for dispensing the powder is very simple. We've selected a dipper, in this case the 63 grain dipper, because I found that it gives you the correct volume. Touches the bottom of the bullet plus about an eighth of an inch of compression. And the first step is to charge the case here. Tap it so the grains that catch on the rim go back into the little jar, and card it off. You can use any kind of plastic card. We do not pour it directly into the shell because we want to get the maximum amount of black powder in the shell, and for that we use a drop tube, which I'll show you in the next segment. I am now showing you a close-up of the top of the drop tube, which is simply a brass funnel soldered onto a brass tube, and just demonstrating pouring the pre-measured charge in the 63 grain measure into the funnel. You do it slowly, don't rush it. And the purpose of the drop tube is because the distance that the grains fall, they orientate themselves inside the case, reducing the amount of airspace between each granule. So it tends to give you more powder in the same space than if you just poured it in, you know, right straight from the dipper. And that's how it was loaded back in the day. In this segment I'm demonstrating the bottom half of the operation of the drop tube. First you place the cartridge case on the base, and this moves up and down depending on which cartridge case we're using. It's a handy thing to have. And then you, as before, I demonstrated before, you pour it in the top of the funnel slowly, don't rush it, and it fills up to the case to the proper level, and that level is just about an eighth of an inch over, just touching the base of the bullet to allow for some compression. At this point, you're ready to actually assemble the cartridge by seating the bullet. Now that we've prepared all the components using the Ideal No.6 tool, the bullet is cast, lubed, and sized. The case is belled and primed, and it's ready to be reloaded. I already added some powder using the drop tube, which I'll show you later. I used this 63 grain scoop, which I found to be the correct amount of powder for this 500 grain bullet. In the olden days, when this tool was actually manufactured and black powder was the only powder, the cases were made a little bit lighter in a different construction, so you could actually fit 70 grains of powder with a 500 grain bullet on top. We can only fit about 63 or 64 grains without over compression. Let's talk about compression. In black powder reloading, which is different than black powder cartridge reloading, is different than smokeless reloading, the powder must touch the base of the bullet. No airspace is permitted, or you can have some serious problems. Also, a small amount of compression is involved or necessary. It improves the efficiency of the black powder. That means that the powder should be slightly higher than the level of just touching the base of the bullet, maybe an eighth of an inch or so, 3/16. So when the bullet is pushed in, it compresses the powder. So the next step is quite simple, and it's really the final step, is you put the bullet in the belled case, and you see it fits nicely and easily. You place it in the opening in the tube in the double adjustable chamber, fit it in, and then you close the tool. It'll require some effort, and you will feel the bullet or the tool crimping the bullet. Remove it, and now we have a properly seated and crimped 4570, or actually 4563 in this case, 500. Clean off the excess lube, and there we have the finished product right there. The method of reloading black powder cartridges differs than using smokeless. We're going to use dippers, and it measures by volume. If you notice, the name of this cartridge is 4570-500. 45 is the caliber, 500 is the grain bullet, and the 70 denotes 70 grains of black powder. So the idea when you load black powder cartridges is to make sure that the powder reaches the base of the shell, or rather the base of the bullet, and allow a little bit more for compression. That's how black powder cartridges are reloaded. So you have to find the proper amount of powder that achieves that. So I'm using the dipper method. So I'm laying out here for you to see various dippers that I've made over the years, and basically all they are 45 caliber shells cut down to the proper length for the amount or volume of black powder that they contain. You shouldn't use a powder measure or a standard powder measure to dispense black powder, because an explosion could result. You have to use a specialized black powder measure, or you can use the dipper method. You can use dippers, plastic dippers, or you can make your own or purchase some. I'm sure there's some stuff online. These are basically, as I said, a 45 caliber shell, 4570 shell, soldered to a brass rod. In this case I put a cartridge case, which helps as a handle, and put some knurling in it. And of course this one is a little bit more elaborate with a antler handle. It goes from 55 grains to 63 grains to 65, 67, and 70. 70, I've never really had much success with that because it requires too much compression. And which one you use, you do it by trial and error. So you want to achieve touching the bullet and maybe an eighth of an inch more for compression. So whichever measure gives you that level is the one you use. You cannot allow any airspace or distance between the bullet and the powder in a black powder cartridge. Now, as you know, this mold is called 45 Government 500, which stands for 45 Government 45 caliber, which is the standard cartridge for the military rifle of the time, the trapdoor Springfield, for the 500 grain bullet, which this mold casts. However, because this is adjustable by loosening the chamber screw and screwing this chamber in and out, the double adjustable chamber, you can load other bullet styles and weights. Now this is the standard one right here, that's 500 grains, that came from this mold, over 63 grains of black powder. That's as much as we can get in there, even with the drop tube. So you notice the shape of this one. I also have in my inventory the 405 Lyman, which is a classic 4570 bullet's been around for well over 100 years, and it is a flat point. The other one is a round point. It's more ballistically coefficient. But for hunting, this is a much better choice. Because you can adjust this, you can also load this bullet. However, as I probably will mention now and again, you should always make up a dummy round. That's a round, an inert round without an unfired primer and without black powder. In this case, I used grits inside to create the compression so that the bullet doesn't fall into the case, because, as I mentioned before, this only crimps the case and prevents the bullet from pulling out, but doesn't prevent the bullet from falling in unless you have a column of black powder underneath or powder underneath. This is only possible that you can do the two-size bullets because it's an adjustable chamber. Many of these other Ideal tools, like this one for the 3220, do not come with an adjustable chamber. It's only for the shape and weight bullet that this is designed for. So you're stuck with it. In this close-up, I'm showing you a close-up of the bullets or cartridges that I just spoke about. This is on the left, the 500 grain cast in the Ideal No.6 tool that we're talking about. And this is a 405, which actually weighs 420 grains as cast. And this is the better hunting bullet. This is the better long-range bullet. This has got a lot more recoil, obviously, because it's 500 versus 420 grains. And believe me, it does make a difference. So these two bullets can be assembled in this tool because it has a double adjustable chamber, and as well as others, because there are many bullets suited, including jacketed bullets, suited for the 45-70 and are easily available. First, after having cleaned the entire tool after I purchased it, I'm going to now, just before I'm going to begin casting for the first time, I'm going to smoke the inside of the mold using some matches. That acts like a release agent, so after the metal cools and you open the mold, the bullet drops easily from the mold. You can see that there's a slight change or darkening of the inside of the mold. The mold itself is the handles are getting pretty hot. It's solidified, and now we'll remove it. The more you do, the longer it takes for the sprue plate to cool. Open. In order to use the bullets that we just cast, they need to be lubed. I've set up the double boiler because I am melting the lube that I prepared a while ago and have used before. It's part beeswax and part Crisco, which is a common lube because Crisco is easily available, as is beeswax. When the solid piece melts completely, I will demonstrate using as I call the plier method of just dipping the bullet in the lube. This is a close-up of lubing the bullet, going up to the top, not to the top of the bullet itself, but the highest groove, the topmost groove. Dip, and you see that it cools and solidifies almost immediately. This is a close-up of the bullets that we just lubed, alongside unlubed bullets on the left. The next step is to lubricize them using the Ideal No.6 tool. Um, In this cut from the Springfield Rifle and Carbine Manual, published by the government in 1898, we see two cartridges. The one on top is solid head. The one on the bottom is inside primed or Binet primed. The bullet on the one on the bottom is a 405, which is the first government loading. The one on the top is the 500 grain bullet, which we are using in this demonstration. In this cut, we see two 4570 cartridges. The one on top is the 4570 500 with the 500 grain bullet. The one underneath is the 4570 405 with 405 grain bullet. Both are U.S. government type loads. In this case, they were loaded by Winchester Arms Company. They were also loaded by the U.S. government arsenal at Springfield and by other commercial manufacturers like Remington. They are both solid head cartridges.